What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the third installment of What If Naruto Had the Jougan. If you guys go on to enjoy today's video, make sure to slap that like button, and with nothing else to say, let's get started.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
After Orochimaru reveals his identity, Team 7 would not quite understand the scope of the situation that they're in. And it is not until Orochimaru pretty much starts letting out a bunch of bloodlust that Team 7 would finally understand exactly what their predicament is. At this moment, Sasuke would start getting way too terrified of the bloodlust that Orochimaru was giving off. And at this point, Orochimaru would pretty much be getting ready to throw kunai at Sasuke. At this point, Sasuke would be wanting to move, but he simply cannot do so. So he would end up stabbing himself in the leg with his kunai to overcome the fear with pain. To which at this moment, Sasuke would end up running away from Orochimaru, and Orochimaru would sit there thinking that maybe this prey is not so helpless. After all of this would happen, Orochimaru would pretty much end up locating Sasuke and Sakura, saying to them that running away from him is inevitable and that his young Uchiha body will be his. At this point, Sasuke would end up pretty much telling Orochimaru that he doesn't want to, he doesn't even need to fight him or anything, he'll just give him the scroll, it's not that deep. So Orochimaru would pretty much stand away from Sasuke, acting as if maybe he might take up that offer. And simultaneously, as this is all happening, Naruto would pretty much have already taken out the gigantic snake with relative ease in this version. A lot easier than what he did in canon. This version of Naruto doesn't actually get eaten by the snake because Naruto was able to sense the danger this time and actually jump out of the snake's reach. At this point, Naruto would be making his way back to the team, and when he finally arrives, Sasuke would have offered Orochimaru the scroll and would pretty much have already tossed it to Orochimaru. As the scroll is mid-air, Naruto would end up saying no as he would catch the scroll. At this point, Naruto would turn towards Sasuke as he would punch him directly in the face, sending Sasuke flying back before then saying, "You're not Sasuke. The Sasuke I know would have fought against Orochimaru," before Naruto then turns to give Orochimaru a death stare and then lunges at Orochimaru's direction, trying to fight Orochimaru off. At this point, Orochimaru would start making literal child's play out of Naruto, as he would just proceed to start pretty much fondling Naruto. He just completely outclasses him in every way, shape, and form. And Naruto was getting angrier and angrier. He's never exactly been put in a position where he was just this utterly outmatched. Sure, he fought against Zabuza and Haku, but even then, he had a slight chance of winning. This is a complete different kind of monster. It's a sort of immovable object. It's as if Naruto was trying to move a mountain with his bare hands. Naruto can't quite see the end of this man's power. So Naruto would start getting enraged, and as he starts fighting Orochimaru, Naruto's eyes would start beaming a bright red color. And this is when Orochimaru would realize, the Nine Tails, eh? Before he would then pretty much go in to hit Naruto with a 5-pronged seal. Before Sasuke, seeing this all go down in front of him, would throw a kunai at Sasuke, saying, "You're right, Naruto. I would have jumped in and helped you. The real me wouldn't be afraid of a fight. If we die here, so be it. I wasn't meant to go any further than this." Before he then jumps into the battle, and Naruto was given just a couple of seconds to pretty much breathe. Naruto and Sasuke would end up both start pressing Orochimaru, and Orochimaru, even with both of these ninjas rushing at him at the same time, would continue making he would pretty much make light work out of them as he dodges the kicks, he catches their attacks, he pretty much counterattacks, he uses shadow clones to rush at their directions, and finally Sasuke would end up shooting a fireball jutsu at Orochimaru before his fake mask or costume would pretty much end up fading. That's when Orochimaru's real form would be revealed, and it would kind of be way more scary than what they thought they were facing. So Naruto and Sasuke would both be put on the back foot, and as they're staring at Orochimaru would begin weaving hand sides rapidly before he then rushes at Sasuke and goes to bite his neck. His neck would literally stretch as Orochimaru just bites down onto Sasuke, and Sasuke would then writhe in pain on the ground. Naruto's eyes would start pretty much like flashing red over and over and over as his heart would start beating out of his chest, and out of nowhere, a full tail would emerge from Naruto's back, before at the same time the Jougan would awaken in Naruto, and Orochimaru would see one red eye and one blue eye in each eye respectively, before Orochimaru says, "The Byakugan?" At this point, Naruto would rush at Orochimaru in unimaginable speeds, causing Orochimaru to actually step back and get hit with a full force punch to the face. Orochimaru at this point would get up and he would say, "No, that's not the Byakugan. What is that?" Before Orochimaru would start pretty much getting extremely excited, saying, "What is that jutsu you are using?" And he starts fighting against Naruto back and forth. Keep in mind, Four Tails Naruto in Shippuden wasn't able to press Orochimaru even when he had like no arms, I believe. Did he have arms? Did he not? I honestly can't remember, but I'm pretty sure, if memory serves me right, Orochimaru had no arms and he was still able to, no, I think he did have arms. So let's just go with that. Regardless of whether he did or didn't have arms, Orochimaru was able to pretty much keep up with a four-tailed Naruto who was going absolutely berserk and shooting Biju bomb level attacks at him. So a Naruto who was a lot younger, only using one tails of the nine tails of chakra, as well as having the Jougan activated at this moment, would, while posing a small threat to Orochimaru, wouldn't exactly be something that Orochimaru is quite scared of. Orochimaru would be studying these movements, and through further inspection, Orochimaru would say, "That's a brand new Kekkei Genkai. Its powers are a mystery. I must find out what secrets it holds." And Naruto and Orochimaru would start getting into more and more of a battle before Naruto says, "Get away from Sasuke!" As he roars that in an ominous tone, and a second tail would appear behind Naruto, before Naruto at this point would pretty much rush at Orochimaru, beginning to get way faster. Now Orochimaru would start throwing attack after attack at Naruto's direction, but Naruto's Jougan ability would actually be able to predict and counter these attacks that Orochimaru was shooting at him, like at this current time. Naruto would start losing himself to the powers of the Nine Tails before one little part of him would resonate within himself and tell him that this is a battle that's not going to be won by sheer power. So instead, what Naruto would do is pretty much set Orochimaru up by throwing a kunai, to which Orochimaru would thrown off guard, teleporting behind Orochimaru, causing Orochimaru to say, "Magnificent. It grants teleportation." Naruto's eyes would flash up electricity-like color before Naruto would say, "Die!" And like this Chidori-like attack would appear in Naruto's hand, before he would then proceed to hit at Orochimaru's direction. Orochimaru would end up pretty much jumping out of his old body, as that body that Naruto just hit got like thrown like very, very far. And at this moment, Naruto would end up getting just enough space to go grab Sasuke, before he then weaves hand signs and gets out of there immediately, leaving no traces behind. Orochimaru, seeing this, would think, "Amazing. I must have that dojutsu. I must find out every secret it holds. That was unlike anything I've ever seen. It grants him more abilities other than visual prowess." Orochimaru at this point would think, the Uchiha now is only going to be a second when it comes to his objective. And so from here, Orochimaru would end up pretty much leaving and not even have the fight against Anko like he does in the original. At this point, Team 7 would end up actually escaping, and Naruto would end up passing out due to fatigue. He would end up waking up hours later, and Sakura would be pretty much having a towel over his head, as she also has one over Sasuke's head. And when Naruto wakes up, his dojutsu, the Jougan, would activate before he looks at himself in a river and sees the Jougan plain as day, saying that he hasn't seen that eye since he was like 8, or since he can remember. And so from here, Sakura would actually end up telling Naruto that, that Jougan ability is something incredible. Naruto would say, Jougan? Before Sakura would say, oh, I just took the liberty of making the name for it. Before Naruto would say, you know, I actually kind of like that. And Sakura would just give him like a half-assed smile before she would proceed to say, we need to take care of Sasuke. Naruto would say that he's gonna put Sasuke on his back and they're gonna go look for a scroll so they can go to the main tower and get him medical attention. It's at this moment that the Sound 4 Genins would arrive, and it would pretty much be Naruto versus the Sound Genins, as they end up pretty much just looking as there's an onlooker nearby. This onlooker would be Rock Lee, and when Rock Lee ends up noticing that, you know, all they have is Sakura and Naruto, Rock Lee wanting to have a good like look in front of Sakura would jump down before saying, these odds are uneven, you know, saying that he'll help him out. From here, Naruto and Rock Lee and Sakura, even though, you know, she doesn't really help much, would pretty much end up fighting off the Sound 4 Genin, and Naruto would end up thanking Lee for his help. Before Lee would tell Sakura if she was proud of him, this Sakura didn't even do anything and she didn't even have to cut her hair, so she is pretty happy at that fact. And Naruto and Rock Lee would both share this kind of like understanding and respect for each other, before Naruto would look towards Lee and say, thank you. At this point, Lee would say to give it his all in the Chunin exams is that he'll be seeing him later on. He wants to fight him at his fullest, as he would then say to make sure that Sasuke gets healed up as well. It's at this point that they would grab the Sound 4 scroll and end up making their way towards the Chunin exams tower, before meeting Iruka as well as Kakashi. Kakashi would then proceed to do the curse mark seal on him, which pretty much works on Sasuke's willpower. So if his willpower is strong enough, the curse mark won't show. If it's weak, it'll show. That being said, though, they would end up having the 1 month battles, the battles before the 1 month, where all of them pretty much have to fight in the preliminaries. When it comes to how these fights all go down, Sasuke fight pretty much goes exactly the same. In this version of events, what ends up actually changing is Naruto and Kiba's fight. This one is actually an easier fight, and this version of Naruto is actually a little bit stronger than the one in the original. So using his abundance of chakra and the multi-shadow clone jutsu would actually end up pulling a win over Kiba in a reasonable fashion, not winning due to plot convenience or because of gas, okay? So after that said, what ends up pretty much going down after these events is the Rock Lee versus Gaara fight. Now the Rock Lee and Gaara fight would end up going just like it does in the original up until the end. This time, Naruto would actually interfering in the battle before Rock Lee even had the chance to get to the state where he had his arm and legs broken, and Naruto would end up jumping in there, pretty much pretty much putting himself in the way of the sand to get hit with it and tank the attack for Lee. But Guy Sensei would actually appear before them both and pretty much send the sand flying away from them with a kick, saying that that's enough. Somebody interfered and Rock Lee loses. Before Rock Lee is just like passed out on the ground, and Naruto would end up looking at Lee and just following him to the medical room, where Rock Lee would then get treated, and this version of Lee would not even end up needing Tsunade's help to remain a ninja. This Lee was actually saved by Naruto thanks to Lee saving Naruto back when. And so Naruto's debt would be paid, and when it comes to the Hinata versus Neji fight, that would go exactly as it does in canon. The Jonin instructors would stop Neji, and Naruto would vow to destroy Neji in the semi-finals before the 1 month of training would commence. And from here, Kakashi would try to throw Naruto to train with Ebisu, to which Naruto would say, yeah, not doing it. He would end up meeting Jiraiya like halfway through it, and the 1 month training with Jiraiya would actually end up going just like it does in the original. He ends up learning about summonings, and he also ends up learning about the powers of the Nine Tails, actually being able to control the cloak of the Nine Tails, not the one-tailed cloak, but the base weakest cloak that there is. So Naruto at this point, you know, he has a little bit of a boost to his power. Not only that, but this version of Naruto would have actually trained with Jiraiya a little bit more seriously, because this version of Jiraiya takes even more interest in Naruto because of that eye that he has. See, if you guys remember the prophecy, it was prophesied that a boy with a blue eyes or blue eye would actually end up saving the world someday. And Jiraiya actually saw a glimpse of the Jougan once when it activated randomly. Not due to danger or anything, but it just like It just happened. Y'all remember when Boruto woke up one day and the Jougan was there? Yeah, it was pretty much kind of like that. So keep that in mind. This version of Jiraiya put in a little bit more interest in Naruto, and they actually ended up finding out Naruto's chakra, his chakra affinity, which led to Naruto learning a little bit more taijutsu and actually learning the wind bullet jutsu and the gale palm. So this version of Naruto has 2 more jutsus at his disposal when it comes to the Neji fight. Now, when the Neji fight ends up going down, at first, everything would pretty much go kind of like it does in the original. Neji would preach about destiny and how it's his destiny to win this battle, and it's Naruto's destiny to lose this battle. At this point, Naruto would end up pretty much rebuttaling this by saying that nobody's destiny is set in stone and that he's going to be physical proof of that, before then activating the powers of the Nine Tails and telling Neji that he better be ready for this, before Naruto would then start moving at unimaginable speeds and Neji's abilities to counter Naruto would pretty much be rendered useless. Naruto's moving so fast that Neji's attacks would not be able to keep up with Naruto. His eyes could, but Neji's body, physically, he just could not do so. And so, the win would end up going to Naruto Uzumaki after Naruto would land a barrage of hits and attacks and then ended off by kicking Neji square into the ground, causing Neji to get knocked out. After this, we end up having the fated battle between Sasuke and Gaara. This would end up going just like it does in the original, leading to Gaara running away into the forest, Sasuke and Naruto rushing after him, and the death of Hiruzen into the hands of Orochimaru. The only real change that happens to the story is regarding to Naruto and Sasuke's battle against Gaara, and this version of Naruto would have actually been able to keep up with Gaara. However, once Gaara starts pretty much overwhelming him just like he did in the original, this version of Naruto would actually step up and coat himself with the cloak of the Nine Tails, also summoning Gamabunta, and then they would end up taking Gaara out swiftly, before then attending to Sasuke's wounds. And just to let you guys know, Sasuke actually ended up learning the Sharingan, learning to awaken it when he fought against Orochimaru. I completely forgot to announce that, but he did out of fear because emotions bring that stuff out of them. That being said, that's how he ended up learning the Chidori, and that's why that went like it did in the original. That being said, this version of Sasuke now has officially caught up to the canon counterpart, and Naruto actually did end up using the abilities of the Jougan when it came down to the fight against Gaara. To finish Gaara off, instead of just landing a punch or a headbutt, he would have actually used the teleportation jutsu that the Jougan gives the user, and with lightning, he would have shocked Gaara into waking up, causing him and Gaara to drop down to the floor, and then Naruto would hit Gaara with that juicy Talk no Jutsu. That would pretty much end up concluding this entire arc, and from here, literally nothing would end up actually changing in the story of Naruto. You guys might be asking, yo, Zether, it almost seems as if the story of Naruto is pretty much going like it does in canon. Now, the reason for that is because this version of Naruto can't actually whip the Jougan out whenever and wherever he pleases. This version of Naruto still has absolutely no control, and up to this point, there hasn't been any moment where Naruto has realized how it is that the Jougan works, or even put any time or thought into dojutsus or any of those things whatsoever. So now is a perfect moment to actually start getting into that kind of stuff. So what ends up actually finally starting to change in this story is that even though Hiruzen ends up dying and they need a new Kage, Jiraiya would actually end up pretty much asking Naruto to go with him. However, this version of Naruto would actually end up opting to, to stay in the village and actually learn a thing or two about dojutsus, saying to Jiraiya that he could just take Sasuke with him. And so this would actually lead to a different change in the story, where Sasuke is the one who actually ends up going with Jiraiya, and they actually end up creating a bond. They would still end up running into Lady Tsunade, and when it comes to the fight against Orochimaru and Kabuto and all that stuff, that still ends up going down, except Sasuke is the one who's there and he ends up hitting Kabuto with a Chidori. So yeah, by the way, one thing that does change is the deal. That never ends up happening, and instead Jiraiya, by saving Tsunade ends up agreeing to end up going to the village and becoming the Kage for Konoha. That being said, what ends up following these events is pretty much Naruto stayed in the village, which means that he had about like 1 or 2 weeks worth of trying to figure out what his dojutsu even is. So during this time, Hiruza would actually end up asking the leader of the Hyuga clan, Hiyashi Hyuga, to actually try to get the dojutsu out of Naruto. And so Naruto would end up spending a couple of weeks actually with Hisashi before they would actually end up pretty much finally, for like after the second day of training with Hiyashi would actually ask Naruto if he knows any way that the Jougan activates. Naruto says that it activates out of necessity, like now and then, but that he hasn't quite been able to like just make it activate on its own. So Hiyashi would end up telling Naruto that he's gonna make Naruto wish that he died if that dojutsu doesn't activate. And so from here, Hiyashi would rush at Naruto and start landing blow after blow consecutively, pretty much obliterating Naruto's chakra path before Naruto would awaken the powers of the Kyuubi, and then the Jougan would activate simultaneously. At this point, the Kyuubi's chakra like aura would begin changing to more of a blue-like color, and Naruto would look at Hiyashi before saying, "Fine, you want to fight? I'll give you one," before wiping blood off of his mouth and rushing at Hiyashi's direction, saying bam, 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 as he says 1 hit, 2 hit, 3 hit, 4 hit, 5 hit, pretty much mocking Hiyashi. And Hiyashi this whole time is trying to analyze exactly what this dojutsu is. Naruto would have landed about 15 blows on Hiyashi before he starts deflecting things with his like omnidirectional deflection jutsu. I forgot what it was called. The 360 palm. Yeah, I think that's what it called. I'm not 100% positive, but all I know is Hiyashi was actually able to, counteract Naruto, and then look at Naruto as Naruto slightly calmed down and looked at Hiyashi's direction. Hiyashi would say that this jutsu, what is it? It's unlike anything that the world has ever seen before. Naruto would stare at Hiyashi as Hinata's pretty much watching from a side, like trying to like kind of peek and see what training he and her Naruto and her father were doing together before catching a glimpse of Naruto's Jougan. Naruto would say that they named it the Jougan and that it actually resonates with him. That sounds really, really, really similar to something that he heard before regarding to that dojutsu. So I know I said like about 20 minutes ago or like 10 minutes ago that Sakura was the one who ended up naming it. Not exactly. She actually ended up hearing Naruto say something about like Jougan in her sleep. So she just said that to Naruto and ended up taking the credit. Okay, let's just change what happened. So yeah. Anyways, Naruto would end up informing this to Hiyashi, to which Hiyashi would say, "Very interesting." He would then look at Naruto and say that to learn how to use this dojutsu, he's going to be needing to like be with somebody who can teach him about this stuff. So following the next actual 3 years of the story, this is going to be changing greatly. And when I say greatly, I mean a lot. Do you guys remember when Itachi and Kisame both ended up arriving at the village and they were there to pretty much find Naruto? That whole fight at the bridge would still end up going on, except this time Naruto, instead of being with Jiraiya, would actually be with Hiyashi, and nobody else in the village was pretty much informed of this. This was like top secret information. So they end up like pretty much telling them that Naruto's with Jiraiya. And so Sasuke would actually end up having an encounter with Itachi, having his hatred for Itachi actually doubled, and Sasuke would end up realizing that he is too weak to kill his brother. So Sasuke would actually, oh my god, that changes so many things. Sasuke would be in a much more bloodlusted state when he was fighting against Kabuto, that realistically speaking, if Sasuke were to have hit Kabuto with that Chidori, he probably would have killed them and had like no remorse for it. So that's going to change a lot in the story, and Kabuto would actually end up getting killed by Sasuke in this version of events because this Sasuke was just enraged and needed to let some fumes out somehow. So after the battle was over, Tsunade still of course ended up going back to the village, but for the following 3 years, instead of Naruto actually going off to train with Jiraiya and literally only learning a big Rasengan, he would actually end up staying in the village and working on mastering the Jojutsu that is the Jougan. However, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys want to get into the Shippuden aspect of the story and you guys want the full rest of the story to drop in a movie format, then I'm actually going to be needing, let's go for 200 likes, right? If you guys smash 200 likes, I promise I'm going to be dropping the full movie version of this. The rest of the story is just going to be there for you guys to listen to, and all you have to do is hit that like button, and I'm going to be covering the whole thing that is the Shinobi like fourth war arc and stuff like that. So if you guys are excited for that content, definitely make sure to go down below and drop a like on today's video. That being said, let me know what you guys liked about today's video. Let me know what you guys disliked. Also, make sure to share this video with a friend and another friend, and just turn on those notifications, man. You don't want to miss a video from Zedder. So with that being said, I love each and every single one of you guys. It has been your boy Zedder, and I am out. Peace.